Hi everyone, I'm Krillius, Team Racing Productions MC and producer. Tonight, I am one of the moderators for the third of our three-part DC Council at Large 2020 Candidate Forum. Parts 1 and 2 are available now on Facebook, Twitter, and the Team Racing YouTube channel. For additional information, visit washingtonblade.com/@large2020. We invite everyone to subscribe to the Team Racing YouTube channel if you have not yet had the chance. We want you to do that because there you will find various content, including numerous interviews with people who are on the ballot this year, including almost all of the individuals running for DC Council. Just go to the nominee and candidate interview playlist as you see displayed here on the Team Racing YouTube channel. On that same channel, you can find vlogs and interviews with entertainers, authors, and more. New content is added weekly and subscribing is totally free. And if you have a Gmail account, it only takes one click. So don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to the Team Racing YouTube channel. Speaking of, please go ahead and follow us on social media. That's TEAMRAYCEEN on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's once again Team Racing on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And make sure you follow us on our Eventbrite page. That's teamracing.eventbrite.com. Make sure that you do that so that you can keep up with everything that we are doing. Now, please also follow the Washington Blade on social media and visit their website, washingtonblade.com. Once again, that is washingtonblade.com. Importantly, please make sure that you are registered to vote and know about your voting options, including mail-in voting and early voting. DC residents can find information at votefordc.com. As many of you know, there are 24 individuals on the ballot in 2020 to be at-large council members on the Council of the District of Columbia. Voters may vote for up to 2 individuals. The 2 individuals with the most votes will be elected. We contacted all 24 individuals and almost all responded and agreed to participate. They have been divided into 3 groups. The third and final group will join us tonight. As we near the top of the hour, let's begin the program. Welcome to the DC Council at Large 2020 Candidate Forum. Part 3 of 3. I am Krillius, Team Racing MC and producer, and I am moderating tonight's forum with the person who I have the pleasure of introducing right now, Racing Pendarvis. Hey, Racine.
Hey, everybody. Greeting and salutations. Vote, vote, vote.
Vote, vote, vote. We are just a little over a month away from the election. Vote, vote, vote. That is the message. And joining us, we want to welcome Team Racing Productions host and East of the River correspondent, the one, the only, she's a friend of ours, Monique Diop. Hey, Monique.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. So glad to have you here, Monique. And next we will bring on the next person we'll bring on is Kent Bose from the Gertrude Stein Democratic Club. And of course, we want to thank the Gertrude Stein Democratic Club for partnering with us for this very, very, very wonderful occasion. Welcome, Kent. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful tonight. How are you all?
Great.
Doing fabulous, doing fabulous. So great to have you here. So awesome to have you here. So next, we want to bring on tonight's candidates, right? We want to bring on tonight's candidates. So all of whom are running as independents, unless otherwise noted. And so I will read their names in alphabetical order as I bring them on the screen. So first of all, let's see who is here, and who is ready to come here with us tonight. I am seeing less people than I saw earlier, but let me bring them on. I'll bring out Ed Lazere. We have Christina Henderson. We have Alexander Padro. We have Anne Wilcox. Let's welcome them. Let us welcome them. It's great to have you all. It's great to have you all. And there we go. We have Mónica Palacio as well. Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And at this moment, let's all, okay, we have Will Merrifield as well joining us. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. There we go. Hello, Will. So at this point, we want to do the opening screenshot with everyone. So I am going to have a countdown as we do this. So 3, 2, 1. And another one, 3, 2, 1. Great. Now, Anne, I'm gonna ask if you could just turn your phone to the, there we go. And let's do that screenshot again as I have you wider. All right, give me another smile. 3, 2, 1. Alexander. Okay. All right, I'm still gonna take it. All right, let's go. So first of all, we want to begin with our speed round. So candidates, please indicate by raising your hand if you are in favor of the following things. Viewers, for additional information on the candidates' stances on various topics, please visit their websites. Again, this is the speed round. Let's start with our test question. Now, this is our test question just to see everyone raise their hand. So please raise your hand if you are a proud resident of the District of Columbia. Awesome, awesome. Everyone's hand is up. Beautiful. All right, terrific. Now, please raise your hands just as high if you are in favor of the following. First up, implementing ranked choice or instant runoff voting in DC elections. All righty, that's almost everyone. Next, police reform. There we go, that's everyone. Next, defunding the police. All righty, that's almost everyone. Next, decriminalizing sex work. Okay, that's almost everyone again. What about Initiative 81, which would only make entheogens or natural plant medicines among the lowest law enforcement priorities for the Metropolitan Police Department and create a non-binding public call upon the DC Attorney General and U.S. Attorney for DC to cease prosecution of criminal charges involving entheogens. That was a mouthful. Awesome, awesome. That's everyone. All righty. What about having term limits for DC council members? All righty. We have 4 people. Next, let's chat about allowing DC council members to be expelled by their fellow council members. All righty. That's everyone, actually. What about making it easier for the public to remove elected officials before their term has ended? Alrighty, that's almost everyone. And lastly, DC statehood. There we go. That is everyone. That is everyone. Alrighty, now we are at the first round, round 1. Now for round 1 of questions, we will draw a name and a number at random. to ask each participant one question from several questions provided to everyone in advance. They will have up to 2 minutes to answer. Monique will signal the 10-second warning and I will announce when the time is up. That's the 10-second warning right there. Do it again, Monique, so everyone can see. Thank you very much. So when Monique does that, I will let you know that your time is up when your time is up. So I want to remind everyone to please mute your microphone except when it is your turn. Monique will draw the names and I will draw the question number. So Monique, who will get the first question?
The first question goes to Christina Henderson.
Christina Henderson. And now I will draw the name and see who gets to ask that question. I will draw the question number, sorry, and see who gets to ask that question. So that is question number 6, Monique.
Okay. How are you, Christina?
Good. Glad to be here.
Christina Henderson, thank you. Okay, DC United Medical Center is slated to close in 2023. A new hospital on St. Elizabeth's campus is still deciding whether it will have a trauma center. Right now, the closest trauma center for thousands of DC residents east of the river is Prince George's Hospital Center, which is scheduled to close next year. How do you plan to ensure healthcare in every district residents, in particular, those living in east of the river, Ward 7 and 8?
Great. Well, thank you so much for that question, Monique, and thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. The hospital issue is actually one of the reasons why I'm running in this race. I think it is completely unacceptable that we don't have a full service hospital east of North Capitol Street in this city. And when I say full service, I do mean handling the very basics of labor and delivery all the way up to more extreme trauma cases. Early in this campaign, I had an opportunity to have a conversation with some firefighters and EMTs about their experience having to go from communities in Ward 7 and 8 and then trying to get residents to the nearest hospital, especially when you're thinking about rush hour. So I'm not sure if you've ever been on Pennsylvania Avenue during rush hour, but getting from over there all the way to Washington MedStar, you're losing time. And I know that DC officials in the past have said, you know, no one has lost their life because of unable to getting to a hospital in time. But I think this is a critically important issue. And I feel like the council members should not stop fighting in terms of getting a trauma center east of the river. I think it's incredibly important. I also think it's incredibly important that we also have an increased access in terms of labor and delivery and OBGYN care. We have the highest maternal mortality rate in the country. And the idea that half the city has to go west or out of state just to give birth, I think is ridiculous for our city. And so for me, the hospital issue is going to be widely important. And one of the other things that I want to focus on as a council member starting in January is what are we doing in the intervening years to provide care? Before this new hospital comes online in 2023, no one is talking about how do we rebuild trust, and repair the harm that has happened over the last few years in terms of communities feeling safe and feeling like they are receiving quality care. And so that's something that I want to work on as a council member. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christina. Thank you so much, Christina. Monique, who do we have up next?
Okay. The next question goes to Will Merrifield.
All right, Will. So let me pick from my bowl. And we have, let us see here. Question number 8, that's Racine Pendarvis.
And thank you all for being here. Housing and unemployment in the transgender community, especially with transgender women of color, is still common. What do you do to have to enforce or exchange non-discrimination laws and gender identity? Did you hear me?
Yes.
Could you repeat?
I can repeat again. Housing and employment in transgender community, especially with transgender women of color, is still common. What ideas do you have to enhance or enforce non-discrimination laws covering gender identity?
Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, our housing and employment areas are widely, you know, not enforced with respect to race, with respect to, you know, every protected category. So I think that, you know, we have to enforce laws on the books, but when it comes to housing especially, we have to make housing more affordable and transform our housing system overall to be one that working class people in general, which a lot of transgender people, transgender women of color, or transgender people of color are. We need to broaden our ability for people to access affordable housing, to access jobs. Right now, what we do is we give away hundreds of millions of dollars worth of public land and taxpayer money to developers to build things that are unaffordable, and it causes a homeless crisis for everyone in DC. And that homeless crisis hits people harder as, you know, you go, as people are able to be, you know, ferreted out into different categories. So I think we need to, what I'm running on is a platform called social housing. And what that does is it creates non-means tested, deeply affordable housing that pays for itself. And that's I think the path forward, is to create, you know, new forms of affordable housing that don't depend on the private market, essentially giving people a public option to rent and enforcing laws against discrimination that are already on the books.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Will. Thank you so much, Will. Monique, who do we have next?
Next candidate is Ed Lazere.
Ed Lazere, all righty. Let us see what question for Ed. That looks like it is question number 4, and Kent will take that question.
Thank you for that. How are you tonight, Ed?
I am well, Kent. Nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you. So DC's small and local businesses have been severely impacted due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and this includes LGBTQ plus businesses and their employees. With this in mind, what is your plan to strengthen the small business community and help DC businesses reopen while preventing the spread of COVID-19?
Great. Well, thank you for that question. And again, thank you all for supporting democracy and paying attention to local elections in DC and bringing up the important issues that are on the agenda tonight. Thank you so much. So I'll just start by saying I am the child of a small business owner. My father ran a bakery that he inherited from his father and grandfather. It was a deep source of pride for me and my family and for our community. And of course, we all have small businesses in our own communities that we love. And they're just the lifeblood of our community, and we need to be supporting them. And of course, they are among the institution most at risk right now in the pandemic because of the loss of business and their inability to pay rent. And I just would start by saying, I want to set a goal that ideally we don't lose any of our neighborhood small local businesses in the middle of this pandemic. And for me, that starts with banning evictions, not allowing landlords to evict tenants who couldn't pay because the economy was shut down around them through no fault of their own. What will that require? That will require landlords to actually negotiate reduced rents with their tenants. It probably will also require us to set up a fund to support some of those landlords who would suffer a lot. But if we ultimately don't want to lose our small businesses, we have to just set a blanket policy that we won't, and that means banning evictions. I also think and have worked a lot through my work at the DC Fiscal Policy Institute to figure out what we can do to support Black-owned businesses, both to help Black residents start businesses, but also to protect those Black-owned businesses that we have in the city right now. We know that it takes a lot of capital to start a business, and one of the hugest impacts of racism is the lack of wealth on average in the Black community. And we also know that Black-owned businesses in the city are at risk of gentrification the same way that other businesses, that residents are, because the community is changing around them and rents are rising. So I'm committed to using the city's resources to provide capital for people of color to start their own businesses, and in particular to support tax policies that will help make it easier for existing legacy businesses in gentrifying neighborhoods to stay in business.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ed. Who do we have next, Monique?
The next candidate is Ann Wilcox.
There we go. All right, let me pick from my bowl and see who is next. And we have question number 1, and that's Racine.
Thank you all. Bills to decriminalize sex work in DC have been introduced at the DC Council in the past, but died in committee. Do you support decriminalization of sex work? Why or why not?
Thank you very much, Racine. It's good to see everyone tonight, candidates and the sponsors of this forum. This is an interesting question because the Statehood Green Party is the ballot party that I'm running to represent this year. We have been on the ballot since the 1980s when we were the Statehood Party. And it's official policy of the Statehood Green Party that we support the decriminalization of sex work. Our National Green Party also takes this position. So I am adopting this position. I obviously have, I think human trafficking is also a huge problem, and exploitation of young people, young women, young trans people, young men. That's something that needs to be addressed through counseling, through law enforcement and other, forums. But in general, the health of people is most important. And also that it allows people who are exploiting those young women to be arrested, the Johns so-called. And it doesn't penalize the people that are engaging in this work. And a lot of times they don't have other options for employment. So, we are supporting that as a position. And I think personally, there are a lot of points, in support of decrim. So I hope the council will continue to look at this issue, particularly in the broader context of violence against trans people that continues in DC as well as nationally, particularly in our current climate where this type of hate and homophobia and so forth is encouraged at many levels. So it's something that we all need to work harder on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you. Monique, who do we have next?
Next candidate is Mónica Palacio.
All right, so the next one is for Mónica Palacio. Let me pick my question. All right, this is question number 5, and that is, I'll ask that question. So, while the DC budget is a financial document, it is also an expression of DC values. For the past few years, a coalition of LGBTQ+ organizations have been asking for more funding and support for the Office of Human Rights, support for a wraparound workforce development program for transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming residents, and extended transitional housing for LGBTQ youth who are experiencing homelessness, to name just a few priorities. What are your budget priorities and how would they benefit the needs of the LGBTQ+ community?
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Racine and Krilios, Monique, for having us tonight. And I think it's kind of serendipitous that I received this question because as the former director of the Office of Human Rights for 6.5 years, I was very active in advocating inside the government and with all the other agencies and with the council in support of greater funding and services for the LGBTQ communities of DC. This has got to be a very high priority for us. DC's values, core values as a city, I think are unchanging. We are an oasis for immigrants, for people who can't find a home in other parts of our country. DC has to be welcoming and inclusive. And I think legislation and funding that supports initiatives for LGBTQ youth, for seniors living with HIV, and for all communities that are most vulnerable in our city has to be a clear priority. And that when I think about the DC budget, we have to focus our efforts there. I think the LGBTQ communities of DC have been very patient with several administrations. And I know, based on my work as a director of the Office of Human Rights, we were the enforcement agency charged with investigating and resolving cases of discrimination in the city. So I saw many cases based on sex, race, sexual orientation, identity, skin color, source of income, and those cases are prosecuted and investigated through the district government. And I saw also the increase since 2016 in homophobic behavior and hate crimes. So we absolutely have to have resources dedicated not only to responding to hate crimes and investigating cases of discrimination, but also in making sure our communities are safe. And one initiative I led in doing that were listening labs with LGBTQ community leaders, and I will certainly continue to do that when elected to the council.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Monica. Next, Monique, who do we have next?
We have Alexandra Padro.
All righty. Alexander, let us see what your question is. That is question number 10, and Kent will take that one.
Thank you. Hi, Alex. Good to see you tonight.
Likewise, Ken.
So 30 years ago, the idea that someone with HIV would live decades was unimaginable. Now people with HIV are living well into their golden years. We also know that many LGBTQ seniors and seniors with HIV report having experienced discrimination and social stigmatization throughout their lives, and this includes access to healthcare and social services. How would you improve support for LGBTQ seniors and seniors with HIV to ensure that they have the healthcare, housing, and services they need? And what agencies do you see as leading in those efforts?
Thanks. And as the only out LGBTQ candidate running for the at-large race and having been endorsed by the LGBTQ Victory Fund, I'm particularly sensitive to this issue. I actually have proposed that a new city-owned development incorporate a number of district government agencies as well as housing for specific targeted LGBTQ population. So I would see the mayor's office of LGBTQ affairs, also accommodated with the Center for LGBT in the District of Columbia, which has not had a permanent home in years and is going to be displaced by the redevelopment of the Reese Center as being two anchor tenants, from the government and nonprofit side, but also that there would be housing specifically for LGBTQ youth, homeless youth, for seniors, LGBTQ seniors, which are a particularly under-recognized part of our population that deserves significantly more attention. We want to see wraparound services provided for those special communities as part of that building. So that complex could be built anywhere in the city where there is an opportunity to redevelop publicly owned land. And I would be a strong advocate for consolidating all of these different functions and opportunities for providing additional housing in one location along those lines if I am serving on the council. It's one thing to have allies on the council. It's something else to actually have a member of the community in the room where decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you. Monique, who do we have next? Our final candidate.
We have already asked the final question. So we're on to round 2.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Everybody gets a new car. You get a car. You get a car. You get a car. And you get a car.
These people
Here
are
we go.
smooth.
Yes, I love it. All righty, so that was our final question. So let us go to round 2. Now, for round 2, we will ask in random order 1 question for each candidate. Once again, everyone will have up to 2 minutes to respond. Monique, who will get the first question?
First question goes to Ed Lazere.
Okay, let us see what is in store for Ed. Okay, so that question will go to Monique.
Hello. Oh. Ed, I think I asked you a question before. So here we go again. Okay. Ed, we all know that you are in favor of defunding the police. What do you say to the voters who are against defunding the police and fear that it will lead to crime and loss of property and public safety?
Thank you, Monique, for that question. And I also just want to say, even though this is a very serious question, this is a really nice forum. You guys are organizing in a very friendly way, and I appreciate that. I think we just have to ask everybody in the district to listen to what Black and brown people are saying, and as well as what we're reading in the news about how the current police culture, not just here in DC, but everywhere, is too often targeting Black and brown people, too often escalates rather than de-escalates, and creates harm rather than safety. Clearly the death of at police hands of Breonna Taylor with no police accountability is a powerful reminder that of this. An innocent Black woman died because of police practices. And here in DC, Don Kay died at the hands of police. He had a gun, and rather than find a peaceful way to talk to him and perhaps get him to give up the gun or to just arrest him, the police tracked him on social media. They chased him down. Police officer got out of their car with a gun pointed and shot him within a few seconds of encountering him. Deon Kay should not be dead today. He should be alive and he's dead because of our bad policing practices. So I guess I would hope everyone would agree that we need to find a new way to imagine safety in the city. I also would talk to people to say, if you see a bunch of youth hanging out on the corner near your house, what's the best thing to help them? Is the best thing to help them to have the police come and harass them? Or is it to help find out what's going on in their lives, connect them to educational or job training opportunities, after school programs, figure out why they're on the street, what problems they're having at home, dealing with mental health or housing problems? That's what everybody agrees is the solution to public safety, is investing in families and investing in stable communities. I also believe that we know that there are processes of having mentors and violence interrupters talk to youth and work with youth as a way to mediate disputes rather than have police. And I would talk to people about that. Shouldn't we try something new, knowing that current policing has really caused so much harm?
Thank you so much, Will. Thanks for that answer. Monique, who is next?
Next question goes to Alexander Padro.
Alexander Padro, all right. And your question will be, by me. So that question is, as council member, what would you do to improve the opportunities of returning citizens and to lower recidivism rates?
Well, great. I've actually been active in creating opportunities for returning citizens to have job training and employment. Back in 2006, I helped to start the Green Team program, now known as the Clean and Safe Team program, that the Department of Small and Local Business Development funds, and primarily hires and trains returning citizens to perform cleaning of our streets, removal of graffiti, etc. We pay them a living wage and also benefits. And this has gone from a handful of neighborhoods, starting in the Shaw neighborhood, where I started the program, and is now active in over 30 different neighborhoods across the city. It's a fantastic program, but with additional funding, we could even be accommodating even more returning citizens. I would also advocate that after the reduction in the need for office space, particularly downtown office space, resulting from the pandemic and the fact that a lot of people are going to be working from home in the future, that we look at providing financial incentives and tax incentives to convert commercial office space into residential, and that there would be a percentage of those units created specifically dedicated to the homeless as well as returning citizens. So those are just a couple of the proposals that I would advocate on behalf of, as a member of the council, to specifically assist our returning citizens.
Thank you so much, Alex. Monique, who do we have next?
Our next candidate is Ann Wilcox.
Okay, and that's me once again. So Ann, do you think that the District of Columbia has adequate services for people who experience domestic violence? How could those services be improved?
Well, as a lawyer, I have had some contact down at DC Superior Court. We do have a domestic violence docket on the court, and they, are obviously very active in trying to get civil protection orders where needed. And I've been involved in some of those cases. There was also a fairly robust system of counseling people who were trying to get that legal protection. And I know that's also continuing during the pandemic. The fact that the courts aren't physically open, people can still file those types of restraining order applications. They're heard virtually. So that work has not stopped. And there's some very important groups out in the community. I hope I can think of all of them now, but obviously, House of Ruth, and there's shelters that are still open for victims of domestic violence. And I think the city has been fairly good about putting funding in place for those types of services. So we need a combination of community services, support, also getting women, and usually it's women and their children, into transitional housing, into safe housing. So those programs are out there. And again, as I said, there's a fairly good system of legal support through the legal services organizations. So we can, obviously we need to, even as we have to tighten our belt over the next 6 months or a year with the COVID budget, this is a very critical service that we have to maintain. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you. Monique, who do we have next?
The next candidate is Christina Henderson.
Christina Henderson, and your question will be asked by Kent.
So Christina, as a result of the pandemic, many of DC's entertainment venues have closed. What would you do as council member to prevent more venues from having to close permanently?
Thanks for that question, Kent. I was actually talking about this last night with my husband as I was going through old videos of concerts that I've been to in the last few years, because I feel like that's the closest I'm going to get to live music in a long time. I'm deeply concerned about, our live music and entertainment venues, especially since, under the current guidelines, they won't be able to have full-on concerts and things like that until there's a vaccine in place. But I do think that we need to get a little bit more creative in the same way that we have gotten creative for restaurants. I think we need to change the way we do our permitting system to allow for outdoor concerts and festivals, even theater, get back to Shakespeare in the Park and those kinds of things. We've seen that happen already in some European countries, and it seems to be working well. But I also feel like there probably needs to be some sort of financial support for these venues to ensure that once we do have a vaccine in place and you're able to have more than 50 people gather, that these businesses are going to be around, because I think we've seen a number of them close over the last few weeks, and it's always like this walk down memory lane, and within shedding a tear for a memory that you won't be able to get back to and that we won't be able to have. And so I think it's incredibly critical that we hold on to these cultural institutions and support these small businesses in this really difficult time that they didn't cause themselves, right? And so what does that look like in terms of supporting workers, supporting owners, and then all the other pieces to it, whether you do sound or lighting, and not just, from the entertainment or bartending side. And so that's something I want to work on as a council member. Also, even looking to see whether or not DC can do its own local version of a paycheck protection program to float our small businesses for a little while longer, while the federal government hopefully gets their act together on a COVID relief bill. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Christina. So who do we have next for the floor, Monique?
The next question goes to Will Merrifield.
Will Merrifield, and I believe that's your question, Monique.
Yes. Good evening, Will. The National Women's Law Center concluded that in DC, a Black woman makes 51 cents for every dollar made by a white man. What would you do as a council member to address this issue?
Well, I mean, we need to, pass laws to make sure that, gender equity is achieved and women are paid as they should be. We have a long history that needs to be corrected with respect to gender inequity. And, it's imperative that we as a DC community the values that we express as DC residents, that we live those values, and that we're treating, you know, everyone, women equally in the workplace and everybody equally in the workplace. You know, I think that when you look at the underlying disparities of Washington, DC, you know, we are one of the most segregated places in the country. We have one of the highest unemployment rates for African Americans, African American men in the country, and we have a school system that is not performing and meeting the expectations of children east of the river as it should. So I think that all these things, you know, we have to change the entire culture. We have to, you know, upend these structures that are creating this. And I look at gender inequity as just another one of those structures that we have to upend. I've spent my career fighting on the front lines for people being displaced through large scale redevelopments. If I'm elected council member, I will fight on the front lines with people to correct inequities like the one you just described.
Thank you so much, Will. Thank you so much. And do we have one more, Monique? There we go. Yes. I was right with the number this time.
Last but not least, Mónica Palacio.
There we go. So for the Mónica Palacio, that will be Racine.
Thank you. Here's your question. What should the DC Council do to better assist people dealing with drug addiction and mental health issues?
Thank you for that question. I think that we need to strengthen our Department of Behavioral Health and invest in trusted local services that provide drug rehabilitation, drug and alcohol, and also help people who want to get back on their feet find sustainable housing, get the job skills they need to be employed. Just 2 weeks ago, I was walking through Brookland and meeting with several neighbors who were gathered outside, and they told me that they're concerned about the number of people who are walking the streets and are apparently have nowhere to sleep and seem to be expressing, right, a sense of disconnect with reality, and that these individuals need services. We need to continue to fund the right services in our different neighborhoods to help the folks that need it the most. Otherwise, they end up in the hands of the police, or they end up in an altercation with a resident because a resident gets scared, a resident doesn't know what to do. So we have to make sure that we're providing the correct funding, the correct resources. And in recent years, I know that the number of beds available have been declining over the last 10 years, and we have to make that a priority as a district government.
Thank you, Mónica. And that brings us to the end of our round 2 questions. So at this point, we are going to move into our closing statements from our candidates. Now, in this section, you have 3 minutes to answer your question, and Monique, as per usual, will let us know what order we will go in. Of course, it's random, and Monique will draw those names. So Monique, who do we have up first?
Okay, the first candidate we're going to hear from is Ann Wilcox.
All righty, that is Ann. And remember, candidates, Monique will give the signal. You have 3 minutes this time. And at the end, please let us know your website, your campaign website, whatever, and how people can support your campaign.
Okay, thank you very much, Curlios, Racine, and everyone. I hope you can hear me. I am Ann Wilcox. I'm running as the ballot candidate for the Statehood Green Party. We are a party, as I said, it's been around since the 1980s when we were originally the DC Statehood Party, and helped people like Hilda Mason, and even before her, Julius Hobson, hold office in DC. I am a lawyer. I came to DC from Ohio, originally Columbus, Ohio, and went to law school here after I was in DC up at American University. So I am an attorney, and the most of the work I have done is public interest work. I did landlord tenant at a place called University Legal Services, other consumer, and even a little business law, because that actually pays better. And I was elected to the school board. I've always been interested in politics, was elected to the school board for Ward 2 back when it was still an all elected Board of Education. That was in the 90s, from 94 to 98. So I did serve Ward 2 during that period, just before the control board unfortunately stepped in. Before that, I had also been appointed to the Commission for Women by Mayor Sharon Pratt Kelly. And so obviously had that experience. The Statehood Green Party is a progressive party. We support affordable housing, which I guess we haven't had a chance to talk about, although we've gotten to a lot of good topics tonight. Health equity, public education, and so forth. Our website is DC Statehood, statehoodgreensofdc.org. That's where you can find me. And I hope you'll vote for me. And since you have 2 votes, I think I'm going to say I think progressive candidates need to start coalescing, and I'm calling on people to also support Ed. And he didn't ask me to do that. I'm doing that. But I think we are so many people on the ballot. I think we need to start narrowing it down. So thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, we love a moment of camaraderie here. All righty, Monique, who do we have second?
Alexandra Padro.
There we go. Go ahead, Alex.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Team Racine, the Washington Blade, and the Gertrude Stein Club for hosting this wonderful opportunity to be able to share with the GLBT community our positions and our ideas. As I mentioned before, I'm the only out LGBT candidate for the at-large positions, and I have been endorsed by the National LGBTQ Victory Fund. It's been a while since we have had an LGBTQ member of the council. It's long overdue. It's important that we not just have allies, but that we actually have advocates from within our own community representing us on the council and helping to make the decisions that are sensitive to our needs. As a council member, I would make sure that our community is heard at the table and behind the scenes when council members are making decisions about funding for different programs and other initiatives. I would impanel a series of community task forces and listening sessions so that there are opportunities for our community and other communities throughout the city to be able to have input into the decisions that I would be making as your at-large council member. My slogan for my campaign is Dreams Come True. And that's short for I want to help all DC neighborhoods and communities make their dreams come true. In the Shaw neighborhood, where I've served as an ANC commissioner for 20 years, and also in my day job as executive director of Shaw Main Street, I've been able to transform our neighborhood into one that was crime-ridden and not very attractive, into one where folks all economic levels are able to live, work, shop, play, pray, and learn. And we have a lot of communities throughout the city that are still waiting for the long promised amenities and improvements in their neighborhoods. I would pledge to work with every community that wants to roll up their sleeves and to work together to attract the public and private sector support that's necessary to make your neighborhood's dreams come true. I was able to do it in the Shaw neighborhood, attracting over $3.5 billion in public and private investment. And it is possible to do it throughout the city without the kind of displacement that usually accompanies revitalization. So it's my objective to be able to help to work with all of our neighborhoods and communities to help to achieve the kinds of transitions and improvements that every DC neighborhood deserves. We shouldn't have any neighborhood that is still waiting for a transformation. So my website is at alexpadro.com. I'm also available on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at alexpadrodc. And I would ask for one of your 2 votes on November 3rd, or maybe even today or tomorrow when you vote, if you are getting your ballot in the mail right now. And I certainly welcome phone calls and emails from everyone in the community about ideas about how to make all of our dreams come true. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alex. And to our viewers, always remember, early voting is important, especially this year. Monique, who do we have up next?
Will Merrifield.
All right, Will, take the floor.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. It's been a great forum. I'm Will Merrifield. Prior to running for DC Council at Large, I was a housing attorney at the Washington Legal Clinic for the Homeless for 8 years. In that time, I've represented tenant associations all over the District of Columbia, going through large-scale redevelopment projects. I fought with people on the front lines to make sure that their housing stayed affordable and that people weren't displaced through those redevelopment projects. Like I said earlier, in doing that work, unfortunately, I've seen that way too often our local elected leaders are working hand in glove with politically connected developers. We're giving them hundreds of millions of dollars of public land and our taxpayer money to build luxury units that are not affordable for working class people. It is driving up rents. It's causing mass displacement in Washington, D.C., as everybody watching this knows. And we're dealing with a family homelessness crisis on the back end of these things. I'm running on some specific issues. I'm running in direct opposition to what I just described. I'm running on a concept to build truly affordable mixed income housing. It's known as social housing. It's based on an international model, and it is the opposite of what I just described. It is the city investing in non-means tested, deeply affordable mixed income housing that people pay 30% of their income to rent from. It is a proven model that has worked in many other places. The only reason it is not the housing model that we have common in the United States is a result of the real estate influence in our policymaking. I'm running on a jobs program along with social housing to build thousands of units of green social housing to get us out of this affordable housing crisis that we find ourselves in and put people back to work post-pandemic, training them and giving them living wage jobs and recycling some money back into the local economy, which we will desperately need post-pandemic to jumpstart our local economy. I live in Deanwood. It's very important when I speak to my neighbors that their children have a quality neighborhood public school that they're able to go to. So I'm running and going to be laser focused on reinvesting in neighborhood public schools so that every kid, no matter what zip code they live in, has access to a quality neighborhood public school. And lastly, I would say we have to increase people's ability through facilities. Christina talked very eloquently about east of the river and the inequities in the medical facilities. We have to invest in facilities, access to healthcare, but we also have to be preventative about our healthcare approach. And I'm running on doing that by wanting to be very creative in giving healthy food options to people in all neighborhoods in Washington, D.C., and of course, stable, affordable housing, which keeps people safe and healthy. My website is willfordc.com. It's will4dc.com. And you can find me at Twitter and Facebook at willm, the number 4 DC. And thanks again for letting me be here tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Will. We like having you here. Who's next, Monique?
The next candidate is Christina Henderson.
All righty, Christina, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for the invitation, and thank you to Team Racine and the Washington Blade for hosting this forum. My name is Christina Henderson, and I'm asking for your vote. I feel like I have the right experience and priorities for DC in this moment. I've worked on political campaigns to help get some good people elected to office. I've worked for a couple of school systems, including DC Public Schools. I've advised and worked with U.S. senators, which is what I do in my day job. And for 5 years, I had the pleasure and honor of serving residents in the district, first at DC Public Schools, and then for 4 years at the DC Council. I was Councilmember David Grasso's first legislative director, and then when he became chair of the Committee on Education, I served as the committee director for 2 years before leaving for my current work. The thread throughout my entire career, though, has been about how do you help working families and children succeed, because I truly, truly believe that one zip code should not be a barrier to your opportunity for success. And unfortunately in DC, we know that's not the case, and that's why I'm running. I'm running because I believe we need a more equitable DC, and because I believe we need more council members who are focused in on policies that are going to make DC more equitable and sustainable for us all. I've had the honor of writing and crafting and help advance over 40 different pieces of legislation that are currently on law here in the District of Columbia on lots of issues that viewers like you care about. LGBTQ youth suicide prevention, getting that training into our schools, and even working on health disparities with the Department of Health. These are some issues that I want to continue to work on. Priorities of mine: increasing access to healthcare, and that is very broad and spanning. You heard me talk a little bit about the maternal care piece, which is super important to me. Improving access to childcare. I view childcare as not just a care issue, but it's also a workforce issue, super important to our economy that we're seeing. Equitable growth and affordable housing. And when I'm talking about affordable housing, I'm talking about deeply affordable housing, but focusing on preservation. How do we preserve the affordable units that we already have, whether it be public housing or rent control, but also boosting affordable home ownership? Because I feel like the affordable housing conversation doesn't always have to be about renting. We need to own property in our city as well. We need to build equity and generational wealth in our city as well. And finally, public safety. Fighting for safe streets for our young people so that when their families are sending them out to school each and every morning, they can feel safe and confident knowing that they're going to come home to them each and every night. And unfortunately, that's not the case. And so I encourage you, I'm asking for one of your 2 votes. My website is ChristinaHenderson.org, or you can catch me on Twitter at @CHenderson. And thank you so much again for having me this evening.
Thank you, Christina. Pleasure having you here. Monique? Do we have anyone next? Yes.
We do. We have Ed Lazere.
There we go. And I'm correct with saying Ed will round out our closing statements for our candidates tonight. Oh no, we have Monica. See, I'm either on the money, one before or one after. There we go. All right, so we have Ed, then we have Monica. Beautiful. All righty, Ed, take the floor.
Well, thank you again, Krilios. Thank you, Racine. Thank you, Monique. So, the thing that brought me to DC several decades ago was teaching math to 5th and 6th graders from low-income families in Mount Pleasant. And I quickly fell in love with those kids, but also fell in love with DC. And I've been here my entire adult life, and every single important event of my adult life has happened here in the district. It's where I got married to my wife, Suzanne. It's where we bought our first and only house in Brookland in 1992, as we were getting ready to have our family, our sons, David and Adam, who we raised all the way through DC public schools, and are back in the city right now. I've tried to give back to the city in so many different ways: as a PTA and LSAT leader in my son's schools, a Cub Scout leader, president of my congregation at Temple Micah, a foster parent, and more. And I've always devoted my career to issues of equity. And that's because I believe none of us is free unless all of us are free. And in particular, I believe the path to equity has to go through the budget. I believe budgets are moral documents because the decisions we make through the budget can impact lives and, in fact, can save lives. And it was 2 decades ago, my sons were just little boys, that I decided I wanted to devote my career to making DC a more equitable place. And that's what I've done for the last 2 decades as a leader of the DC Fiscal Policy Institute, where I work to highlight the city's deepest inequities in things like housing and schools and jobs, and built relationships with people throughout the city to do something about it, particularly through the budget. And I'm proud to have been part of bringing paid family and medical leave to the city, $15 minimum wage, changing the school budget formula to steer more resources to high poverty schools, and property tax assistance for seniors to make sure they're not priced out in gentrifying neighborhoods. And I'm running because I'm deeply bothered that our prosperity in DC has come at a cost, a deep cost of rising homelessness and displacement, particularly of Black and brown residents. I'm frustrated that school inequities continue to happen, and I'm angry that we have leaders we elect who say they care, say they want to do something about these issues, and then don't. It breaks my heart to see these challenges, and I'm running to address DC's deepest inequities at the scale they demand. In particular, I'm eager to jump in right now in this pandemic. I want to make sure that we get through this pandemic without any DC resident losing their home, without any small business being displaced. I want us to make sure that the pandemic doesn't widen our education inequities. What we need is somebody with experience, somebody who knows how to build coalitions, who knows the city's budget and knows the processes for getting things done, and that's me. And that's reflected in the endorsements that I've received in my campaign, including Attorney General Carl Racine, Councilmember Alyssa Silverman and Brianne Nadeau, Councilmember soon-to-be Janice Lewis-George, a host of environmental organizations like the Environmental Club and 350 DC and Sunrise Movement, a host of labor unions, and a host of social justice organizations like DC for Democracy, Jews United for Justice, and the Democratic Socialists. My campaign website is edfordc.com. I look forward to being your new council member and working for a more equitable DC with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you so much. And of course, now we will go to our final candidate tonight, Mónica Palacio.
Thank you, Krillios. Yes, thank you, Monique. Thank you, Racine, for having us tonight. So I'm really excited to emphasize for everyone that's listening that I'm the first Latina in DC history to run for DC Council. And I think that's a very, very important point because many of the folks in my communities have never had the privilege or the access to run for DC Council. So I decided to rewrite that chapter of history for our city. I'm a civil rights lawyer, I'm an advocate, I'm a mom. I've lived in the district since 1990 when I came here to go to law school. I grew up in rent control housing. My mother was a New York City nurse, and I learned how to take care of people and look out for our most vulnerable families in our neighborhood through watching her help Latino families who couldn't speak English to the doctors who only spoke English. And she was my role model for service and change. One of the reasons I decided to run for council this time around was because I was deeply frustrated by the lack of investment in civil rights and human rights by our city. While I proudly served under 2 mayors as a director of the Office of Human Rights, I found an agency that was chronically underfunded, that was kind of existing in the 1980s. And I rebuilt that agency literally from the ground up. And it doubled in size, and the council and the city place so much trust in our agency that the number of laws we enforce greatly increased, and the number of times that I had to testify about legislation that my agency was being asked to enforce, went from twice a year to 10 times a year. And I think that is a testament to the work I did there, not just as the director, but also as the language access compliance director for 2 years. So I believe this election truly is about saving lives and protecting families. We have to pay rent so people won't end up on the street. We have to invest in schools so children and families struggling the most are not left out of our rebuilding and our reconnecting as a city after COVID. And we also have to put racial justice at the center of this conversation. Not just for Black and white residents, but also for Latino residents and families that need our attention and our services so much. So I'm so pleased to tell you that this has been an incredible race, and I'm running to win a seat this November. You have 2 votes. I just need one of them, and you can give them to whoever you want. So I'm really thrilled to be here. My website is monicafordc.com. You can also find me at Twitter and Instagram, Monica, the number 4DC. I'm thrilled to be part of this forum, and I'm so excited to see what the November elections bring.
Thank you so much, Monica. Thank you. And the final person who will give a closing statement is, of course, the one, the only, Racine Pendarvis.
Thank you. Thank you all to our candidates for standing up for change, standing up for justice. This is a journey, and I wish you all the best on your journey. An amazing journey. When you stand for something, you will not fall for anything. It takes a lot to make a difference in this world, to stand up for something, to say that I want to make change, that I believe that I can be a voice for people. That after November 3rd, for those who do not make the council, your journey is just beginning. The task has been given to you to continue to run a race, to walk into the light of those who have given you the strength to continue being community advocates, being voices for change. Sometimes it's not all about a position, but it's about the passion. Let the passion fuel you. Let it continue to be a light for you. Let you continue to be a light for others. And I'd like to thank the Washington Blade, the Gertrude Stein Democratic Club. I'd like to thank our volunteers. I'd like to thank so many people for making this day possible. I'd like to thank Team Racine, Krillios, Monique, Nikki, and so many others. Team Racine is a family. Our beloved Czar, who is a light, who's a force, who's a beacon, who is someone who sometimes is a family. We argue, we fuss, we fight. We may not always agree, but when we walk in the fellowship of love and light, and we walk in the fellowship of believing that we love each other and know the love that we have for each other, it fuels us. Sometimes as a family, we may not always walk the same path, but we come together under the fellowship of love. And that's what we are in this country, a family of those who forefathers were beaten, hung, didn't have the right to vote. But today you are born, that is your birthright, to have the right to vote. Someone made it possible for you to have the right to vote. Never take voting for granted. On the local level to the national level, every vote counts. And I believe that your vote can make that decision for someone to step into office. I know mine does. Do the census, vote early, register to vote. Voting is important, otherwise they wouldn't try to stop you from doing it. Vote for a better choice. No candidate is perfect. Voting is so important. Volunteer to get those, at least 3 others to the poll. Carry your grandmother, your mother, and your great-grandmother, your next door neighbor, the store owner, the waiter who serves you in the restaurant. Say, are you voting? Let's go together. Your co-worker, even someone you don't like. Take an enemy, be a friend. Reach out to someone. You may not like that person all the time, but you say, what? I love you enough to say, let's go vote. Let's sit together and make a change together. And I thank you all for giving us this time. Kilio says some more things to say to close us out as well.
You know I love to talk. Anyways, thank you so much for that, Racine. And thank you, Monique, for helping us. And thanks to Kent from the Gertrude Stein Democratic Club for joining us this evening. Now, for more information about the Gertrude Stein Democratic Club, please visit their website and follow them on social media. Now, we also want to take a moment, as Racine just did, to thank the person who made all of this happen, and that's Czar. And while you won't see him on stage or on camera, he's the producer, director, scheduler, and scriptwriter for everything we do here at Team Racine Productions. He may be the person responsible for the words I'm saying right now, which he certainly is. So let's all give Czar a silent round of applause for all his hard work, making all 3 nights of our forum possible. And it's been such a lovely one, and I'm glad we are here. It's been such a successful series these 3 weeks. Racine, would you like to say anything about Czar?
Yes, Czar is single. And also single, looking for gentlemen between the ages of 18 and 33. Please DM me more about that and I can fix you up.
Are you campaigning for Czar? Are you campaigning for Czar, Racine?
He's not running for office, but Czar needs a husband. And I'm Racine Penjarvis, and I approve this message.
I approve your approval. And so, Czar, that was your shameless plug. And we're about to go into some shameless plugs right now. So we thank all of our candidates for spending this time with us, and we wish you all well on the campaign trail. You all may now log off or turn off your devices. And now we have some special acknowledgements and important announcements. Good night, candidates. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much. Now, at this moment, let us get into our final shameless plugs for the night. Now, for more information about the Washington Blade, please follow them on social media and visit their website, washingtonblade.com. Once again, that is washingtonblade.com. And they're celebrating 50 years as America's LGBT news source. Make sure visit their website. Then please follow Team Racine on social media. That's TEAMRAYCEEN on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Make sure that you follow us. Also, please follow Racine Pendarvis on social media and visit racine.com to take the Black LGBTQ survey through October 30th. We invite you all to join us for these live streams on Facebook and YouTube. First of all is Music Mondays with Racine Pendarvis at 12 noon Eastern on Facebook Live. And we get into trivia, music, games, and all of that. Then on Tuesdays, we have the Best of Gay DC nominated Tantalizing Tuesdays with Racine Pendarvis and yours truly monthly on third Tuesdays. Our next one will be October 20th. Next, we have Read a Book Wednesdays with Racine Pendarvis at 12 noon Eastern on Facebook Live. Get into some literature because reading is what?
Fundamental.
There we go, honey. And of course, sticking to the Wednesday, every first Wednesday during the hiatus of the Ask Racine show, we are doing First Wednesdays Live with Racine Pendarvis featuring Krillias at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Team Racine YouTube channel. And we will be having a discussion about voting, local politics, and the presidential election when next we gather virtually on October 7, 2020. So make sure you join us there at 7 p.m. Eastern, October 7th, for our First Wednesday Live with Racine Pendarvis featuring myself. And then, of course, on behalf of Team Racine, I thank our production sponsor, HF Pharmacy. For more information, please visit their website, ahfpharmacy.org. And make sure that you are here with us. We love everything. It's been a wonderful night. It's been a fabulous series. And thank you all so much for joining us for the 3 nights. If you were here for 3 nights, but if you weren't here, thank you for joining us tonight at the DC Council at Large 2020 Candidate Forum, moderated by us and put on in collaboration with the Washington Blade and the Gertrude Stein Democratic Club. Thank you all so much. Bye. Thank you for joining us. And please like and share. Good night, everyone.